get going. I'm sure people will be joining us as we keep chugging along here, but we've really got a pretty darn interesting evening tonight. I think you're going to be extremely glad you came. So we always start with an invocation and a pledge, and I've asked Jim Robinson if he would lead us in both tonight. So, Jim?
I think this is on.
It was.
Hi. Okay. Please stand. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we're grateful, Lord, for this opportunity to share information, Father. We just are so appreciative of still living in a country that has some liberties left, Father. We just thank you and praise you and pray that you open our ears and open our mind for these ideas and information. Father, we just ask your presence here as we pray in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. And the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, Jim. All right, last month we talked about John Beale quite a bit, and I do want you to know that he did pass away on April 23rd, and his memorial service is May 23rd. So if any of you know John and want to attend, there you go. It's May 23rd, 1 o'clock at the Turning Point Bible Church. So if any of you need that information, you know, you're sure welcome to email me and I can let you know the details, but that is that situation. Okay, we have a video, John. So this is just a video of the Wall Street Journal.
The Republican Party. What is the group's agenda for 2016?
Yeah, this is just a Wall Street Journal interview with Jenny Beth Martin, and she's wanting to know what is the Tea Party agenda as far as presidential politics and that type of thing for 2016. So I thought you'd like to hear it.
The Tea Party has become a big force in the Republican Party. What is the group's agenda for 2016? Tea Party Patriots President Jenny Beth Martin joins the show. Jenny Beth, now your organization is how large exactly?
Well, we have over 1.5 million Facebook fans, and we have hundreds of thousands of people on our email list.
Okay, so this isn't a small group. All right, so when you're looking at the presidential candidates for 2016, what is your group's priorities?
Well, we're looking for candidates who are going to support the issues that we care about. One thing that we've done over the last 6 years is we've been on the defense in the Tea Party movement. We've stood against the passage of the Affordable Care Act, against cap and trade, against many different things, and so now we're trying to see how can we be on the offense and proactive. We know that there's something wrong with the way Washington works, and we want candidates who are willing to shake up the apple cart and address the problems in Washington to level the playing field between the ruling elite and the rest of America.
Okay, well that sounds like classist talk, the ruling elite and the rest of America. That's a discussion for another day, but I want to know about the specific policies. Name 3, 4, 5 of them that, you would look at as a checklist for candidates.
The first thing is a candidate who would, by executive order, get rid of the congressional exemption to Obamacare. And that is an elitist thing for Congress to be living outside of the law of Obamacare, yet expecting the rest of America to live under it. We want Obamacare repealed, and we also want there not to be special exemptions for Congress from the law. We want to have a balanced budget. And we want to see a candidate who will work to get a balanced budget amendment passed and will also embrace the penny plan, which is simply spending 1 penny less out of every dollar the government spends to get our budget balanced within 5 years. It won't take much to actually have us without having a deficit.
Now, we've just had a midterm election in 2014. How did the candidates do that embraced some of these issues that you're talking about?
Well, I think that when we look at the way that the Senate won in historic margins, the Republicans continued to control the House of Representatives, and they talked about these issues and talked about economic freedom. These are winning issues. These are things that Americans care about, and so we're looking for candidates who to embrace these values, and then once they're elected, actually enact them into law.
Well, we embrace economic freedom too. So, Tea Party Patriots President Jenny Beth Martin, we hope you'll join the show again soon.
Thank you.
So one of the things that the Tea Party is doing is what they call the Yellow Card Project. And so you heard in that interview that she mentioned, a candidate that would end the special exemption for members of Congress and their staff from the Obamacare. And what she's meaning by that is that they have been exempted and don't have to use exchanges or anything that way, whereas the rest of us and employers and things do have to. So, it's just another example of how Congress passes laws and then they don't follow them. We have to, they don't have to. The Tea Party Patriots is really hot on repealing Obamacare. And I just feel that after an entitlement has really been in place for the amount of time that Obamacare has been, even if it is a short time, it's really hard to totally repeal it. We're going to have to see how the Supreme Court rules on the King versus Burwell case. But even if they rule that those states that weren't part of the exchange could not offer the subsidies, I truly feel that the Republican Congress is going to come up with a fix, because they don't want to jeopardize themselves by being the bad guys, and those who, quote, illegally receive subsidies would have to repay them. And so I hate to say it, but I really think it's a non-event. I think that we're here with some form of a national health care program. And we're just going to have to see what they do, but I don't think the Republicans are going to show a repeal without a replacement that's going to keep a lot of those things in place. So the Yellow Card Project is really pretty cool. It's designed to put pressure on all the candidates and sort of create a buzz around certain issues. And the reason that how they're choosing these issues is that they have been doing extensive polling across all spectrums of the country to determine what are people most in tune with, what do they align with. And only those issues that get over a 70% alignment would even be considered to be put on the yellow cards. So let's say one of the yellow card things would be to repeal the exemption. If that got over 70%, then that would be one of the things that go on it. So anyway, they have these yellow cards. I think they'll have 5 questions on them, and they even have the answers on the other side. And what the idea is that the candidates that are given these cards basically recognize, whoa, if I don't answer this way, I'm going to be in trouble. And after they've been televised enough times, being asked this question, answering it this way, how in the world are they going to back down from that position? Because you know how we treat flip-floppers and that kind of thing. So that is the yellow card project that they have going. So this is a part of the meeting that I think is fun. We do announcements concerning issues, things that are happening locally, statewide, and nationally, and upcoming events. And we have quite a few announcements tonight, and I'd like to start with people that are running for office in this next election, and we'll go alphabetically, and I apologize, I don't have a slide for this gentleman, but I think you probably all will recognize him, and that is John Ahern. Come on up here, John.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to, what do I have, 30 minutes? No. 33 more seconds. Okay. Well, I'm running for Spokane City Council President, and the big reason why I'm running is the fact that, well, I've been here 40 years, a little over 40 years, and I've watched the City Council operate over those years. You know, you've had Democrats, Republicans, Independents, and so on. They all seem to get along pretty good. except for the last 2 years. I can guarantee you one thing. That city council has become so business unfriendly, and it's gone so far to the left. I figured if it goes 2 more steps to the left, it's going to be off the cliff. Give you an idea of some of the things I'd like to see absolutely change. You know, you ask people, what are your number one issues? Of course, number one, they'll come up with, they'll come up with about 3 things. One, roads, potholes. My gosh, it's unbelievable. And of course, one of the things that's a detriment, I think, for the roads is what George McGrath came up the other day or last week, and he said, you know, the bridge to Hookerville, and of course that created quite a thing in the city council that day. But by the same token, he's not kidding. That's a $20 million operation. That could go for roads. And of course we have taxes and regulations, that type of thing, that are really interfering with the business community. I'm a businessman myself. I've had a business since 1983 or 84. And so I do know the ins and outs of business and that type of thing. I think one of the key things, in addition to that, is what's my background? Well, I spent 10 years in the Washington State Legislature. I've got some bills passed. One was the felony DUI bill. Helped get that sex offender bill through that Jim Foley finally got through. And the Veterans Home for Eastern Washington, which is located down at 5th and Cowley. So I have had a 10-year experience in the city council. Why am I running against Ben Stucker? Well, I'll tell you what, I think he's a little bit immature. And if you've seen a little bit, right, if you've seen him in action, I'm telling you right now, he needs anger management training, a big series of that all the way down the line. My campaign slogan is going to be simply this: the city council needs adult supervision. There's no 2 ways about it, adult supervision. And so anyway, I think I can offer an awful lot to the city. Business background, I've got the maturity. I can keep my cool under pressure. I've been doing it. I've been in sales all my life, and if you lose a sale, you don't blow your cork and that type of thing. So cool, calm, and collect. That's the key thing, I think. Thank you very much, and I'll pass out some brochures for you. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really think that with John's expertise and the number of years that he did spend in the legislature, he probably knows better than most of the people, other than one, on the council how to behave. So that would be pretty cool. I notice that Mike Fagan is not here, but Tim Bin is standing up. So I think he probably comes with a message.
Well, I am Mike Fagan's campaign manager, so I'm really familiar with the city and Mike Fagan's council district. He is my councilman, and as you know, right now he's the only voice of reason on the council, and so we need to get him reelected. Right now, all we have is donation envelopes, and with your donation, we can have flyers, signs, and we can keep some balance on that council by reelecting Mike Fagan. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, I mean, honestly, when you fill up the envelopes, that's when you get the signs, that's when you get the, you know, all the other things. So it's sort of one thing comes first. And Dave White, I recognize Dave came in. So Dave, would you like to come up and tell us about yourself and what you're running for?
Most of the people in here I recognize, but I am Dave White. I'll be running for District 3 City Council in Spokane. The question is, are we going to have tyranny or are we going to have liberty? The question is, are we going to be patriots or are we going to be subjects? 2 weeks ago, we had the council ban George McGrath from saying the word Hookerville. It sounds relatively innocuous, but if you let the council get away with that, why, by golly, they might want to have free speech zones and tell you that where and when you can't protest against something like an abortion clinic. Oh, wait a minute, they've already done that.
They've already done that.
Well, that's pretty bad. If we let them get away with that, well, they might just decide that they can ignore the rules like our president does and let any illegal, any person from any country that makes it to Spokane have a safe haven here.
Already done that one
wait
too.
a minute, they have done that.
You're going to make me leave?
Ladies and gentlemen, we got a crisis. We got a crisis. We also have a council president, Mr. Stuckert, that when Mr. Salvatore left, we had a number of people come in and testify long and diligent about they wanted somebody similar to Salvatore to replace that position. And Mr. Stuckert went on record saying that he wanted somebody that thought like him, and John Snyder had to add his 2 cents worth. He didn't care what the people thought. And so they appointed my opponent, Ms. Karen Stratton, a pot grower. Now, I have no problem with a person carrying on a legitimate trade. But as our representative on the city council, I think it sets a real poor example. Ladies and gentlemen, I have 25 years of working for the county as an inspector. I have public works experience building everything from roads, bridges, sidewalks, sewer pipes, water pipes. I put it all in for 25 years. In the city of Spokane, we have crumbling, aging systems. I'll be on the radio with Mike and Tim in a couple of days. We recorded today. And we brought up the point that for every 5 gallons of water that the city pumps, they can only deliver 4 because 20% of that water is leaking and they have no clue where it's going. A couple of weeks ago, we had a sewer backup in the city of Spokane that affected several homes. We have a crumbling infrastructure, and we have a city council that rather than focus on fixing that crumbling infrastructure is worried about deconstructing perfectly good streets that handle 4 lanes of traffic and cutting them down so we can have better bicycle lanes. We have a serious issue. I want to take this challenge on. I want to be the representative for the northwest side of the city, and I too need your help. We had a fundraiser the other night. We got close to $500, and I want to thank each and every one of you that contributed. But that's not going to be enough to run this campaign. I too have some envelopes in the back because I haven't quite yet been able to get the other materials that I need to even start doorbelling. So please, if you'll give us some help, we'll get some adult supervision on that council and we'll get some changes made. Thank you.
And then running in the city of Spokane Valley, we have Sam Wood. Sam, would you come up and talk to us? Now, we sort of know a lot about John and we know a lot about Dave, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Well, I've lived here all my life. I just never have stepped out into this arena. And this arena is kind of an interesting place to be walking out into. You know, 6 months ago, I would have never imagined that I would be standing here asking you for your vote. That's the furthest thing from my mind. But here I am standing here asking you for your vote. So the question is why? And I'm asking myself that. Why? Why am I standing here asking for your vote? Well, I was pretty content. I've been on the Planning Commission for over a year for the Spokane Valley. I'm chairman of Carnhope Water District. Just talking about water. That's a big challenge. I've been on that for 20 years. It's a little water district by about Park. We have about 440 users. Pretty proud of that service. And I'm on a director for Scope. So if you sum all that up, it sounds like, you know, that's pretty good service. And then I was pretty content serving that way. Well, about 2 months ago, Ed Pace, Arnie Woodard, and Rod Higgins approached me, and they asked me if I would be interested in running for city council. And they said they were very concerned about what was happening in Spokane. And more government, more taxes,
More bicycle trails.
Mandated sick leave, on and on and on. And of course, what's happening over the state of Washington? The gas tax, talking about property taxes, raising property taxes 6%. They don't seem to ever get enough money. They raised taxes $1.5 billion. They had increased revenues, and they still need more money. So I had to think about them when they asked me to run. They said they needed a coalition. They needed to build a strong front against what's happening. I'm very conservative, and I have very conservative principles. So I thought about it, and so here I am, standing asking for your vote. I'm asking you for your vote for smaller, more efficient government, to keep that trend going in the Spokane Valley, to put a wall up between us and Spokane, right? You know, I thought I'd never say that, John, and you know, they talk about fences down in Mexico. I feel like we need one right up here on Havana, right where my water district starts. Excuse me, I'm a little close now.
Put a bridge across it.
How about a bridge? No, we don't want any bridges. No, I love Spokane, but they're really, really messed up. I listened to Ben Stucker today at the Home Builders Association Government Affairs meeting, and he you know, he has a way of saying certain things that sound really good, but of course we know that most of it is a lie. So I'm asking for your vote for smaller, more efficient government. And people ask me, well, what does that mean? I had a guy call me today and say, what does smaller mean? Well, we're a contract city in Spokane Valley. We have 87 employees. Well, I contend that maybe we don't need 87 employees. Let's take a look at that. Let's do baseline budgeting. Let's look at every item in that budget and go through it and look at it and analyze it and evaluate it. Don't just keep every year adding 3%, adding 3%. The programs that aren't working, get rid of them. So I'm an essentialist, if for any of you know what the term is. I believe in essential things, and that Spokane Valley can be really good at a few things: public safety and infrastructure. Let's get really good at those things. And the rest of it, you know, if we have the extra money, we can put it toward it. So the other thing that I want your vote for is small businesses. I have a passion for small business. I'm a self-employed person for 45 years. I ran a restaurant for 27 years called the Woodshed Pizza, Spokane, for those of you who've been around forever. And I have a little appraisal company. And I have a heart for small business. So I want to encourage them. I want to be their voice. And finally, but most importantly, a vote for me is a vote for property rights. Defend those rights and protect them. The EPA is after them. Ponding of water on people's property. and saying that they have control over that. I mean, this is unbelievable. So, in closing, if I may, I'd like to read from Philippians 2 and 3. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourself. Each of you should look not only to your own interest, but also to the interest of others. Thank you, and I hope I can have your support this fall.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, we are on to, well, first of all, did I miss anybody running for office? Okay, we are on to concerning issues. And I'm not sure how many of you listened to KXLY News last night, but this was quite interesting. And I asked Bonnie Mager if she would come and sort of share with us why she really pushed for this investigation. And, you know, we've heard about a lot of this, and I've often said, how do you get the press? Because I'm still sort of old-fashioned, and I think that press should be investigative reporters. So when they're fed a tidbit, they should investigate it and find out if there's any truth to it and that kind of thing. And you cannot get the press in this town to investigate a blissful thing. It's just amazing. And so Bonnie basically took the bull by the horns and instigated an investigation. So Bonnie, would you come up and talk to us about it? You just hold it up close.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to come today. I felt like it was sort of providential, actually, when I got this email from Cecily asking me to come and speak before you. And the reason for that is because I've been to several of your meetings, and I feel that everyone here wants what's best for our community and is very motivated. And unfortunately, a lot of folks out there are asleep and aren't really paying attention. And Cecily, you're absolutely right about the press anymore. They're on skeleton crews. They have multiple beats, and it's really difficult for even the ones who have the inkling to take the time to investigate anything. And I know this firsthand because I started investigating this when I first saw in the newspaper that Marshall Farnell got a $33,000 a year increase in his salary. And I thought to myself, there's something really fishy about this, because Marshall had been talking about retiring from the time I was in office, and we were talking about a succession program, and people who'd been at the county for years said that they'd come up and say, is Marshall really going to retire, and when is he going to retire, because he's been talking about retiring for 20 years. And I'll just leave it at that. But I thought, well, why would any businessman and why would government give any one employee that kind of a raise, especially in a time when we had cut back the county, eliminated departments like the Boundary Review Board, where Susan Winchell was actually bringing in hundreds of thousands of dollars in grant money to the county coffers to do good planning and she was a real asset. Why would we get rid of these different departments and then turn around and give one employee at the end of his career, who had no intention of going anywhere, $33,000? So I started to ask around, and what I heard was that Commissioner Milkey was planning to and had enrolled at the University of Washington and was spending several days, 2 to 3 days a week, over there attending classes. Now, I will say that it's true that he was also on the Washington Association of Counties board, and that he does spend some time in Olympia, so you might cut him a day or so. But when you're talking about spending that much time away from your district, you're also talking about spending time away from the health board and all the many, many other boards that commissioners serve on. And I can tell you from experience that commissioners kind of fly under the radar, and people think that it is more of a go to luncheon kind of job, but it is not. If you're doing it right, you're serving on everything from the health board to ruling on dangerous dogs to working on SRTC, and there's the whole smattering of issues that you have to try to keep up to speed on to do a good job. So when I heard that he was making his $97,000 salary a year and is in Seattle much of the time going to school, I thought, oh, he wants Marshall's position. And that's what this is really about. And I'm sorry, but I absolutely believe, and I brought a copy of my letter that I sent to the prosecutor, so I'll leave it here for anybody who wants to look at it. But I started to pay attention, and then I thought, well, but Todd's only one vote, and it takes at least 2 votes to give Marshall that kind of a raise, or any kind of a raise. And so what would be in it for Mr. French? Well, lo and behold, there's another article in the newspaper saying how Nancy McLaughlin is now the chosen replacement for Todd. Well, I used to be the executive director of the Neighborhood Alliance, which was a nonprofit organization. It was an umbrella organization throughout the county that worked on neighborhood issues. And so I paid a lot of attention to what was going on in Spokane, and went to a lot of city council meetings. And Ms. McLaughlin and Al were very close. And Ms. McLaughlin often looked to Al in terms of how she needed to vote. And she herself said in the newspaper that she would love to have a seat at the table, that she admires Al very much because he basically had taken her under her wing when she joined the city council, and that she had, it had been like a foreign land to her. Well, I think anybody who is gifted with a $97,000 a year job by virtue of her friendship is going to be beholden to that person. And since we only have a 3-member commission, that puts Mr. French in the catbird seat when that happens. And so I saw where the benefit was to Mr. French to give Marshall that pay raise. So then we kind of went, so frankly, I went to the press and I said, I'm hearing this rumor that Todd is going to school while he's still county commissioner. That doesn't seem appropriate to me. Do you think that this is a story? People seem to think it was a story, but nothing ever happened. I went to 4 different reporters. Nothing happened. So then we went along, and some other things fell into place. Let me look here. I'm losing track. Beg your pardon? Oh, so then anyway, because I'm kind of a policy wonk, I spend a lot of my time before I was county commissioner, and I've continued afterward to get the CDs from the meetings, and when I drive back and forth from Cheney, I listen to what's going on, so I don't have time to spend hours listening in meetings. And I hear this conversation about how Marshall is going to retire, and that they need to set up a process for selecting the new CEO. And I'm thinking that's a little odd, because when I was in office, we had a process, and that process was like most businesses. You do a search, you accept applications, your HR department vets those applications, they take the ones that are qualified and they move them on to the next level, which in our case is the county commissioners. The county commissioners review the applications, they get together, they deliberate on those applications, and they choose the new CEO. Well, I'm hearing in this conversation between the three commissioners how, oh gosh, this hasn't been done for 27 years. We need to create this new process. This process should involve some kind of a committee that's outside the bounds of the county commissioner. And Todd is in, and he is participating in this conversation. And for, you know, a year and a half, everybody at the county campus knew that Todd was wanting to apply for this job. And so I'm thinking, why is he helping to set up the commission that's going to then interview? And I also feel that I didn't understand that if you have integrity, why, if you wanted to be the CEO, you wouldn't resign your position, go to school, and come back and apply. It looks a little too much like the revolving door to me, only it's you're able to give yourself, you're able to position yourself to be the lead person. And it just doesn't feel right to me. And so it hadn't been looked at. At the end of that meeting, as he's helped to discuss what this new hiring process should look like, he announces that he will not be, he's going to recuse himself from being, from helping to select the committee. I thought, well, that's magnanimous, you know, and because he's been urged to run, and that or not run, but that he's been urged to apply, and that he's considering it. Seems a little disingenuous to me. So at the end of that meeting, then there was more, a committee was selected, and I was called by Kip Hill, and Kip said, well, what do you think about this? I said, you know, this committee seems contrived to me. We already had a process, and I think it was a good process, and I don't understand why you would put in place a new process for this when we don't use this process for any other position. And so Kip said, well, what would you do? I said, well, I'd follow the money, and I would take a look at who the people are that have been placed on the committee. So the next thing you knew, there was a little article. I didn't think it was very well researched. There was a lot more that could have been in terms of relationships and committees and whatnot. But at least he went and looked at the PDCs. Two of the people on the committee had contributed to Todd's election. Well, when that happened, when that came out, two things happened. One of the members of the committee withdrew his name and chose not to serve on it. And another member, his company, asked him not to be on it. And so then they went ahead and replaced those folks with a pretty homogeneous group of folks. I mean, I would think that if you were going to do a committee like this, you would ask for a little more diversity. You know, people, just kind of the common folks too, people from the neighborhood, some of the districts, whatnot. Anyway, so I think anytime everybody looks and feels and thinks the same way, we're missing out a little bit. We're a very diverse community. Anyway, nobody asked me. So what I decided was that this just was corruption, and I really can't stand corruption, and I think that maybe I'm wrong, you know, everybody always is wrong, but if you connect the dots, it truly looks like corruption at the highest level of government. I don't think we can afford that. I'm happy to speak, so I filed, you know, I filed a request I don't think that the prosecutor can afford to do the investigation himself because his budget is dependent on the county commissioners. I don't think we got the pool, even though we got 84 applicants, we have no idea who they were or what their background was. And further investigating, I find out from a lawyer friend of mine that they violated the Open Meetings Act and not just the Ethics Code of the state of Washington, which basically the Ethics Code says you can't use your job for the benefit, the personal benefit of yourself or anybody else. To me, I feel like 3 people have been benefited in this process. One is Todd himself, who's kind of setting himself up for the job. 2 is Marshall Farnell, who got a nice super bump in his paycheck for 3 years at the end of his career, which also helps his retirement and Social Security. And 3, Al French, who's going to be the beneficiary if Ms. McLaughlin gets put in place, of having an inordinate amount of control over anything that goes on in the county. So I don't like the way it looks, and I thought that it was important for the benefit of all the people in our community that somebody who's non-partial and independent take a look at this and go ahead and investigate it. I'm hoping that Larry Haskell will step up and that he will send it to the Attorney General's office because they don't have a dog in this fight, and that they will come up with whatever they come up with, but that at least we'll have the satisfaction of knowing that it either was or was not corruption. And what I would like to ask all of you, because you're activists, is that if you would call Larry Haskell or email him. His email address is lhaskell@SpokaneCounty.org. And I'm sorry I didn't bring my piece of paper up here. I'll give you the phone number as well. You can call and ask him simply to consider himself conflicted out and send it to the Attorney General's office. And letters to the editor are good too, because I think if we can't, everybody in this room, I think, wants to change the world for the better. We want to change our nation. We want to make it a more, more egalitarian, that serves all of us. We want to make a lot of big changes, but it starts right here at home in our county. If we can't even make the changes here in our county and make sure that our government is on the up and up, I don't know how we can go forward and change the bigger landscape. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Right, I was going to ask, does anybody have any questions? It's L. Haskell, Haskell, @SpokaneCounty.org.
I don't think it could be any clearer that it's cronyism. So consider the guy that is the other candidate after it's all said and done. The guy got fired from his last position.
Right. Well, it's just hard to believe that only 2 people out of 84 and one of them got fired from his last position are qualified. I mean, it's just as weird. You had something up here? Yes, I'm concerned that if the prosecutor were to use the process, the internal process that's countywide, that in this instance he's having then to investigate not their boss because they're elected, but the 3 people who basically preside over their yearly budget. And I can tell you that when I was in office, the prosecutors felt that they needed a lot more prosecutors in order to get through their caseload. So I think there's an inherent conflict of interest. Okay. Anybody else? Wait for the microphone, please.
I think it was the paper talked about Marshall Farnell. Was it 2012 he got that raise?
Yes.
And in the paper, I think you were quoted, I don't know if you were quoted or not, but anyway, the paper said he had actually turned down for a number of years cost of living increases. So he obviously wasn't asking for that raise, was he?
I didn't say, I'm not accusing Marshall of asking for the raise, and I do not.
No, I don't mean that. I mean, he was almost forced to take that raise. Is that how
what I understand, Bruce, is that because we were in tight times, you've got to remember 2008, that kind of thing, that I believe, and you know, I don't know if Rob's here or not, but I believe the county basically held down cost of living raises and things that way. They kept the step raises, but they didn't do the others, or vice versa. So people back here know the answer to that. And so,
yeah, because it really does smell bad.
Yeah, I mean, what Todd says is they had a report that said that he was underpaid. I asked how many other people got raises because they were underpaid.
Well,
I'd like
just
to
to
see
answer
the report.
Bruce's question, I think it's been since 2008 since any employee's gotten a COLA raise. So, you know, so it wasn't just Marshall. I think it was everybody that was in that boat.
Right, and I would
Thanks,
say,
Rob.
I would tell you from personal experience that James Amacio, who basically is a prosecuting attorney but serves at the pleasure of the board, and actually I always used to tease him and call him the first commissioner because he had the institutional knowledge for all the years that he's been there, which I think rivals Marshall's. He didn't get a raise. And certainly, I'm sure that if you were to look and evaluate all he does for the county, he would consider him underpaid.
Any other questions? Well, it's definitely something to keep track of, and whether you feel there's teeth in this or not, I truly think that Larry Haskell's in a position that he needs to turn this over to the state level. There's no way that Spokane County should be taking on this investigation. And so the more that you can do to do that, great. And we have another question over here.
For those of us that are new at this, could you give us a concise thing to write to him and just say it how we would say it?
Sure. Maybe you could you send it to Cecily and she can forward it to me, or give me your email address, as I can give you a piece of paper and you can give me your email address and I can help you word it if you'd like.
Great. Bonnie will come over and sit beside you as soon as she's done here.
Okay.
KXLY do a story, is that?
Yes, we're going to show the video here in a minute.
Oh, and let me tell you also, you can go, I've started a web page as part of my Facebook. If you go to Bonnie Mager's Facebook and then at Advocate for Spokane is one of the pages on the left-hand side, or if you just put in at Advocate for Spokane, we will keep you up to date. All the news articles, the little clip of the video of the last night and everything will be on there. And as this progresses, we will keep you up to date on that.
Great. Okay, well, thanks so much, Bonnie. I really appreciate you. We have one more.
Just quickly, Bonnie, you might consider getting on the Rick Rydell program.
Okay.
Channel 4.
All right.
I mean,
KXLY
Radio
920.
920. Okay, thanks.
Whoops. Okay, so John's going to play that video now.
Just hand this out. Thank you.
Yeah, if anybody wants to see this letter, Bonnie has it there with her.
Days away from selecting a new chief executive officer, and some last-minute allegations against one of the candidates threatens to delay the process. Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Nadine Woodward. A former Spokane County commissioner is criticizing the way the county is selecting its new chief executive officer. Bonnie Mager asking for an independent investigation for the way current county commissioner Todd Mielke has allegedly stacked the deck and emerged as the front-runner candidate for that position. KXY4's Jeff Humphrey broke this story on his Twitter account. He joins us now live at the county courthouse, where prosecutor Larry Haskell has been asked to see if Mielke has violated state law. Jeff?
And Dean, whoever becomes Spokane County's new CEO will be in charge of one of the area's largest businesses with a budget of $576 million. It's a very important job, and now a former county commissioner is accusing Todd Milkey of giving himself the inside track on that position, even a raise in the future if he gets it.
I think that this is the corruption at the highest level of county government, and having been at that level, I just can't sit back and let it go unchecked.
Bonnie Mager sat on the board of Spokane County Commissioners from 2007 to 2010. Mager remembers even back then, County CEO Marshall Farnell was looking ahead to the day that he would retire, and so Mager was shocked to learn that in 2012, County Commissioners, including Todd Milkey, gave Farnell a $33,000 raise.
$33K, a lot of eyebrows were raised. We were just coming out of the Great Recession. Budgets have been cut. They were continuing to be cut that year, in fact.
Mager says Farnell's raise seemed inappropriate for the Economic Times until she learned that Todd Milkey was angling to replace Farnell when he retired.
It was like, what's behind this? It just didn't smell right to me. And so I started looking around and asking around, and lo and behold, I heard that Commissioner Milkey had enrolled at the University of Washington and was getting a post-degree.
In order to qualify for the CEO job, Milkey needs a master's in business administration, and Mager claims Milkey missed a lot of county commissioner meetings to get it.
The proper way to do it would have been to resign, to get your degree, and then to come back and put in your application along with everyone else.
Mager also alleges that as a sitting commissioner, Milkey helped put together the committee that would screen CEO applicants.
I think the county needs to do a redo, and I think they need to go out and get a qualified national firm so that they can attract the best qualified candidate.
And Sonny Dean, late this afternoon, we heard from Commissioner Milkey about these allegations. He says that $33,000 pay raise was the result of a consultant study that found the CEO position was grossly underpaid, and so the county simply decided to match what the city manager of Spokane Valley was making at the time. The commissioner says that his studies at the University of Washington only causes him to miss about 3 days of county commissioner work per month, and that he's never missed a county commission vote. He says that he did attend one meeting that dealt with the selection process, but as soon as it became apparent there was going to be a competition for the job, he recused himself and never attended another one of those meetings. The commissioner also corrected my story today, saying that this MBA degree, it's a preferred requirement, but not necessarily required in order for Milkey to get the job. Those job interviews of the two remaining candidates, including Todd Milkey, start here on Wednesday. Reporting live at the courthouse, Jeff Humphrey, KXLY 4.
So that was the report that was on the news. Okay. And Larry Haskell's phone number for whoever wants to jot it down, 477-5838. 477-5838. So we're going to go to upcoming events. And the first upcoming event is tomorrow, and that is the Commissioner's CEO position interviews. 9 o'clock, Human Resources Building on Malin Avenue, and out of the 84 applicants, only 2 are being interviewed.
If you can make it, you will make a difference by attending. I can tell you that because when we have land use issues, I've encouraged the common folks who have an interest in good government to always attend the deliberations, and I can tell you that when people are there,
when people are there to watch what's going on during those deliberations, it does make a difference. So I'm hoping that they will do a redo. I think that this at the very least, shows that there is an appearance of misconduct, if not in fact truly corruption. Thank you.
So honestly, if you can attend tomorrow, 9 o'clock, Human Resources Building on Malin, definitely do so. You know, a lot of us sit around and we complain about stuff, but it's until we get up off our butts and go do stuff that you make a difference. Upcoming events. This is another one I think you should attend. The speaker, as you can see, is Larry Haskell. And this is the Ponderosa Republican Women's Luncheon on Thursday at the Red Lion River Inn. He thinks he's going to be talking about officer-involved shootings. I do encourage you to attend. Then on Friday, Arnie Woodard and Sam Wood are doing their sort of kickoff campaign for positions on the Spokane Valley City Council. So that's Friday, and at 6:30, there's going to be, I love this, light refreshments and short comments will be served, and you all are invited. And again, you've all heard that it takes money to run campaigns, so I'm sure they will be asking you to put money in envelopes. And then the Republicans of Spokane County Club has their meeting on Monday. They have Mike Padden talking about getting a bill passed, and Sherry Scandelis, who runs the Higher Ground Animal Sanctuary. So, and then one more, the Spokane County Constitutional Republicans. Now, they normally meet on the last Monday of each month, but the last Monday this month is Memorial Day, so they've moved it ahead 1 week to June 1st, and they have a gal talking about Common Core and standardized testing. So that's, does anybody need me to go back through those? Tom, which one? Okay, we're going back. Okay, so the commissioners are tomorrow, and then we go to the Ponderosa Republican Women on Thursday at the Red Lion River Inn on Division. Onward to the kickoff for Arnie and Sam on Friday at La Bellevue, 6:30. And then the Club of Spokane County Republicans meet on Monday, May 18th at 6:30. And Spokane County Constitutional Republicans, Monday, June 1st at Sherry's on Sullivan. Okay? So next, and then we have one more upcoming event, and that'll be our next movie night on June 9th. And what we're going to be showing is One Generation Away, the Erosion of Religious Liberty. It's a DVD, it's a good presentation, and very worthwhile your time to attend. So tonight, I couldn't find a DVD that would cover everything that's going on in this world. This is the craziest time. It's just nuts. And so there are, you know, too many issues out there. So that's what we're going to be talking about. There's just so much going on locally and statewide, nationally, worldwide. There's not enough time to discuss them and, you know, really get a feel for what's happening. But I think by touching on them here, I mean, how many of you found the information that you were hearing over the news this past month on the Trade Promotion Authority and the Trans-Pacific Partnership far more interesting after you had the background of what you learned last month? I mean, it just helps, you know. So that's what we're going to be doing today, because it's really frightening, and to me it's certainly time to put our trust in God, because it's obvious that man doesn't have the answers and is just really messing this whole thing up. So the first thing I want to talk about is things that are close to home. And as all you know, we're back in a second session of the legislature for the state of Washington. And they're supposed to be coming to an agreement on the budget. Now, the House passed a budget, quote, a balanced budget, but they wouldn't vote on it. And the Senate passed a budget, which they did vote on. Now, the reason the Democrats didn't want to vote on their budget was because it included $1.4, $1.5 billion more in taxes. And Chop said that he didn't want them to have a real vote and put their name on the line so people would see that they voted for that kind of a tax increase. I mean, pretty crazy. If this is the budget you're proposing and you won't even put it up for a vote, what kind of a budget is it? So all of these three things are included in that $1.5 billion. Increase B&O taxes on service businesses like attorneys and things that way. Raise more taxes on cigarettes, bottled water, oil refineries, any other thing that you can think of that you can, and capital gains tax. We've got to have a capital gains tax.
That's a backdoor to an income tax.
Right, and that's what most people are saying, is that the capital gains tax is a backdoor to an income tax. So it's sort of your first step toward state income tax. But there's more. The Senate passed a transportation package that still hasn't been approved, and in that transportation package they have proposed an 11.7 cent per gallon gas tax, and that was a Senate bill, and that's basically a Republican-controlled Senate. So, you know, I wish you guys would quit saying Republican and Democrat anymore, because you can't say Republicans are good and Democrats are bad, or Democrats are good and Republicans are bad. You've really got to look at what they're doing, what they're saying, and how they're voting. It really makes a difference. And then they decided to just throw something at us last week. It's a new bill. It's House Bill 2255, and it would replace the 1% property cap with a formula that's tied to inflation. And inflation and population growth, and it would allow an increase as high as 5% per year. So I mean, you start thinking about that, what's that going to do? You know, you stop and think 1% a year over 10 years is 10%, which is a lot of money. But when they can start doing this kind of stuff, how many of us are going to continue to be able to afford our homes and our property taxes and things that way? So, you know, it's not good. And believe it or not, guys, this is another bipartisan proposal sponsored by a Larry Haler. He's a Republican from the Richland area, and a Democrat from Medina, Ross Hunter. And then cap and trade, you know, that thing got shot down, so now we have a new approach. And so they're reviving and rewriting it. And they really want Washington's major business energy users to pay for the right to produce specific amounts of carbon emissions, and then permit others to sell or trade their pollution quotas. And that is actually scheduled to be talked about and discussed and done whatever this Thursday over in Olympia. So this is what Olympia does when the 2/3 majority is not protecting us. So, you know, get on your phone, call your representatives, you know, really push to get a budget passed with no increases, and then get your hands on some of the initiatives and gather signatures, because it's really, really, really obvious that we cannot count on our legislators to act responsibly. And Tim Ben's going to be talking in a little bit here, who can fill you in on 1366 and things, but we have got to get the signatures on that initiative in more than adequate numbers, so that will appear on the ballot. We've got to have that constitutional amendment. So again, Initiative 1366 is calling for that to be put in the form of a constitutional amendment. The tax relief those initiatives, before it was ruled that we had to get the amendment, saved us over $26 billion in taxes. And in 2010, that protection was suspended, and that resulted in higher taxes. We need 340,000 signatures. They're needed by July 2nd. Donations are needed. You know, we seem to have one superstar at our area gathering signatures. But they also pay people to gather signatures. Can you believe? I mean, we have to pay people to save us taxes. I don't get that. And signatures are needed. So donations, signatures, and we need you all. And I really challenge you tonight to, like I said, Tim will be talking in a few minutes, but to get an initiative from Tim, take it home with you, get it filled, and then he'll tell you where to send it back to or get it to him. But if everybody in this room could fill a petition, you know, one of the pages, it would help a lot. We need to start moving our feet. Now, one thing that I thought was really, really fun last week was CREM also did a report on our local legislators. And they said that people in the town really complain that it doesn't matter who you vote for because they just vote party lines and that kind of stuff, and they whined and cried. So I think you'll enjoy this report.
Politics, we're keeping tabs on the voting records of our local lawmakers. Voters often complain that lawmakers simply follow the party line, but we found out it's actually a mixed bag. Ryan Sims is live now after looking into that issue.
Randy, talk to just about any voter, and one of the first complaints they usually have is that politicians simply toe the party line. We hear it all the time, but is that really the case? I looked at votes from the regular session that ended just a few days ago and learned some lawmakers are more likely to reach across the aisle than others. Whether it's perception or actual reality, it's pretty safe to say that Washington voters don't exactly hold state politicians in a high regard.
They get hit with the kickbacks and they lose consciousness of their morality.
A lot of them always just toe the party line. They don't think for themselves.
It doesn't matter what year it is, what the issue is, or even really who the politician is. True to form, voters often complain that politicians always toe the party line and nothing else. And just days after the regular session ended in Olympia, well, Two on Your Side is putting that mindset to the test, scouring the website WashingtonVotes.org. We tabulated the voting records of all the local politicians to see who, and who wasn't, the most likely to buck the party trend. Coming out on top was Representative Matt Shea. On 127 different occasions, the Spokane Valley Republican voted against the majority of his own party. It included a vote on a bill that would have provided alternative penalties for traffic violations. 32 of Representative Shea's fellow Republicans voted for that bill, but Representative Shea, well, he voted against it. Representative Bob McCaslin also bucked the party trend more than 100 times, including on a bill that would require rape tests to be sent to a crime lab within a month after a sexual assault. That bill was passed with bipartisan support, but Representative McCaslin was one of the people who actually voted against it. GOP Senator Mike Patton, well, he also defied his party 75 times. Senator Patton was the only lawmaker, in fact, to vote against a bill that would allow teenagers with minor criminal offenses to have their criminal records sealed. But on the flip side, well, Democratic Representative Marcus Rochelli actually voted with his party the most. Out of 549 votes, in fact, Representative Rochelli voted with his party on all but two occasions. And it is important to note that lawmakers had the option of casting more than 500 votes during the regular session. Even when they broke away, the majority of local lawmakers voted with their party more than 90% of the time. Reporting from the studio tonight, Ryan Sims, KREM 2 News.
Now, I do have to add something on the rape test kit. So they sort of threw McCaslin under the bus. I think you probably saw that. But when you really look at the bill, it's like a 4-page bill. And really what it wasn't about the 30 days. What it was about was just adding a whole nother layer of regulation, reports, committees, panels, that kind of stuff, so they could track everything a little better. So it really wasn't as bad as they made it sound. So to me, it's one more reason to be proud of our 4th District representatives. Let's keep them in office, and God bless them. So on to the next issue that's made news here locally. And I've got to tell you nationally, other than George just got up, so we've got to go get him again. And, you know, it's really interesting, but George McGrath is a regular at the Spokane City Council meetings. He's incredibly well informed. And, you know, he does his best to challenge the council on their bizarre ideas of improving the center and, you know, the city. And George is here tonight, and I want him to update us on this whole hoo-ha on the bridge to Hookerville. So, you know, we're waiting for George to emerge from the little boy's room. Well, he just went to the little boy's room. This was just not the best time. So what the council tried to do was ban I read the phrase to the bridge to Hookerville, and you know, and it's just crazy because it just took over the airwaves today. And I really want you guys to talk a little bit about how many of you have heard about this? Right. So what our problem is this is a bridge from the Gonzaga U District over the railroad tracks. And the bridge that they proposed has a cost of something like $16 million. Well, investigation shows that a similar bridge can be built for $3 million. So, and it's a pedestrian bridge. So why in the world are we spending $13 million more that we don't have? George, you're supposed to be up here now. And so George just very nicely, every time he appears at the city council meetings, he reminds them about the bridge to Hookerville. So I want him to, first of all, I want him to show you his shirt. He's part of the 8th Man movement. And tell us about your experience with your First Amendment rights.
I will do that.
You get 3 minutes.
Thank you.
He
now,
knows
is this
all
Mr.
about
Stuckert?
3 minutes.
No, not Mr. Stuckert. Stuck up. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And you know, it's kind of interesting. I walked in, and I felt comfortable in here. And it has just grown throughout the evening. And the only thing I can come up with is there are a bunch of people who are realistic, conservative, honest, interested Spokane citizens here. So I am happy that you're here, and I'm happy that I'm here. Now, the idea of free speech, which seemed to go viral a wee bit today, is something that I believe is inherently accepted by all of us. But what do we know about free speech? Free speech is the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. When was it enacted? December 15th, 1791. All of the 10 original amendments the Bill of Rights, were enacted the same day, December 15th, 1791. Now, have you ever wondered why is free speech the First Amendment? And why is the Second Amendment the right to bear arms? Because in truth, folks, without the free speech, we don't have any rights. And without the right for guns, we do not have the ability to retain all of our rights that are given to us by the Lord. Now, the Free Speech Amendment was not incorporated to allow us to speak the way the rulers wanted us to speak. The Free Speech Amendment is made for one purpose, and that is to allow dissidents who are not talking the way the ruling class wants us to talk to say and to speak their mind and their beliefs. Because when it comes to the pablum that the people who want everything nice come up with, what they want for speech is like our city council. The city council of Spokane is, I've been in Spokane now for about 48 years. This is the worst city council I've ever seen. And the primary reason for that, folks, is because they are in a position where they're manipulating our rights. And that is one of the sad things with our rights, with our freedoms. They don't come in with a great big scoop shovel and dig them all out. Little bites, incremental bites. So when you have someone like Ben Stuckert, well, first let's go with Karen Stratton. She got her knickers in a knot, and she got upset because I used the term, the bridge to Hookerville. Oh my golly. Of course, I've only used that term probably 15 or 20 times at different council meetings, but a week ago Monday, she objected, and President Stuckert, being the astute elected official that he is, figured that, hey, his type of tyranny would definitely be accepted by the people of Spokane and by me. Gee, that might have come as a surprise to me. Anyway, the idea of our free speech being eroded by our elected officials is sickening to me. And as you watch the Spokane City Council, you will see that happen week after week after week after week. And as I said, they're using the ability to nibble away at you and to do what they want by circumventing what is real and what is right from the constituents out here. One of the areas that you've all heard about is the bridge to Hookerville. And I don't know if any of you have driven that area, the neighborhoods there, but the north side of that bridge, the footprint is in a parking lot in the University District. It goes across the river and across the railroad tracks, and the south side of that bridge is in a very beat up, nasty area as far as transportation is concerned. It's a semi-parking area, a truck parking area. I anticipate it'll cost another $1 million just to put that street in condition so that the bicyclists and the pedestrians coming across from the U section, from the university section, will have nice, smooth, well-marked streets on which to walk and ride. Now, I just heard recently that First Avenue, east of Division Street there, starting at about the 800 block and going to about the 1200 block east. And if you've been in that neighborhood, you realize that it is very much a dilapidated, rundown neighborhood. In fact, I was through there at night, and it's such a narrow street, and there are no garages in these residences. Everybody parks on the street, so both sides of the street are blocked. You can barely drive through there. And it is nothing but potholes. Well, you and I are going to spend $1.6 million redoing that street. And gee, I wonder who's going to benefit from that. It wouldn't be the promoters, the wheeler dealers, the ones that are going to be building the apartments and the condos and bringing in the jillions of dollars of business, will it? Anyway, that is something, if you get an opportunity, drive down that little street area there. It's from about Havana Street on over to the end of First Avenue there where it dead ends. But again, this is something that they have planned, they have programmed, and if you say something about it, oh, they've got all of the reasons in the world why this is necessary. Because, gee, we can't do something up on the south side and the north side without doing it down in East Central District. So, anyway, folks, this is the eighth man. And the eighth man, I believe that all of you are the eighth man of Spokane. I would like to see you at every Monday night meeting so that your freedom of speech is not going to be tromped on by your city council. And I do thank you all for listening to me rant here. And I thank Cecily and John for the invitation to come here.
Well, we thank you. And I think you all remembered what Sam Wood said. The people want to shore up the Spokane Valley City Council to sort of keep Spokane City from infringing. And so that is why I have always encouraged people, attend those Spokane City Council meetings. I don't live in the city, but what happens in a city gradually just keeps coming and infecting all of us. So I want to bring up Tim Bannon. Really, I'd like you all to acknowledge him. Tim is an activist. He is a Spokane native. He's a husband and a father. He's an expert on child care. We all know that. I've learned that he's a mechanic extraordinaire, and he's a very, very involved citizen, let me tell you, and a very good friend. You saw George's shirt, Spokane Eighth Man, and it's had an impact. And I really want Tim to talk to you about what citizens can do to make an impact. So we've got the council, and we've got initiatives, and we've got a person that's learned how he can really keep people aware of what's going on. And I've just got to thank you, Tim, because you're special.
Well, I've been blamed of that before. You're not on yet. I don't think I'm on. Are we on? We're on. Okay, another thing I do is landscaping. And the landscape I'd like to see change is the political landscape. So, Eighth Man, it's not a party. It's not something that has a platform. It's about you, your ideology, you as a voter, you as a sovereign citizen. And I think you should join. And we have shirts here so that we can send a message to the city councils that regardless of your religion, your color, your, whatever category they want to put us in, we're all in this together. We're citizens that are concerned about government. And with that, we have a sanctuary city ordinance that was put into place, and we need to repeal that. And it's not about bias-free policing, as they put it. It's more about that employees are not allowed to ask for immigration status. That means programs like SNAP and housing and grants, business loans through Ohana's, different places that the city supports with your tax dollars could be, I don't know, supporting human trafficking. That is a problem we've seen in Spokane as a hub of distribution for many things. Human trafficking is one. So we want the employees of the city to be able to ask questions about immigration status. So if you would please pick up a few of those and mail them in. We need all the help we can get. A fellow by the name of Fred Kidney and myself have collected about 1,800 signatures. A few hundred of those were collected. John Ahern's worked on it. I know that Virginia Warren has worked on it. And we need all the help we can get. We need probably about 4,000 signatures so that we can make sure that all those signatures are good to validate it for the ballot. And that's due January, at the end of January, yes.
Question, Tim. Do these signatures have to be within the city limits of Spokane?
Yes. Good question. George asked if all the signatures, have to be from the city of Spokane, and yes, they do. And that is for the sanctuary city, so keyword city of Spokane initiative. And so we want to get that done. It's really important. We actually have the whole nation watching us because King County and the city of Seattle enacted a very similar policy. And of course, we see places in California and other cities, about 100 municipal governments have enacted it. And so the immigration folks would really like the citizens' help to untie their hands and see where things will go nationally if we, start following federal law. It'd be interesting. The next initiative we're working on is the 2/3 requirement to raise taxes. And so it's 1366. We voted for it 5 times as citizens. A couple of legislators sued us to overturn that. So we're doing like 17 other states have done, and we're doing a constitutional amendment. And there is a little bit of teeth behind this, because if the legislature doesn't move on it, it's asking for a 1% reduction in our sales tax. And I don't see Washington legislature want that to happen. I mean, that's a lot of money. It's probably, a lot more than the $3 billion they got, an increase this year. So please do get a few of these, 20 signatures. Everybody in this room knows 20 people that don't like paying taxes. There has to be. Raise your hand if you think you know more than 20 that don't want to raise taxes. That's got to be everybody. You know.
No, that's a count.
And this is statewide, Washington State, and we need a ton of signatures, and we want to get that on the ballot for the general election as well. Yes.
When I was getting signatures, I asked one of my friends, Brett, and he said, well, isn't this going to fail because it's covering two subjects? First, the 2/3 requirement, and then second, the 1% reduction in sales tax if they don't do that. So I was hoping somebody would address that.
Well, I'm not an attorney, so I probably can't say on record exactly, but my thought on it is that it's covering two different issues, because if you just hand this to the legislature that wants to raise your taxes, that's proven they want to raise your taxes, we see how they operate without this being in place. So if you just hand it to them and say, oh, we'd like to see this happen, and there's no penalty, then they just put it into place. So I think you can cover both avenues with this, because if you don't get one, you get the other. So basically, they have to pick which direction they're going to go. There's a fork in the road ahead of them, and it's the citizens of Washington State. If we get the signatures and we get this on the ballot and put it into place, they have to pick one route or the other. Well, looking at our legislature, yeah, I'm sure
serious lawyer type drew it up.
Yeah, a team of attorneys have looked at it. I mean, if you think about our legislature, how many attorneys are in it? Quite a few. So I'm sure a number of attorneys have looked at it. I'm sure that there's a number of attorneys that would like to see it challenged. And so we'll have to see exactly, yeah, Secretary of State has attorneys, the AG's office, you know, so a lot of attorneys have looked at it. Of course, there's always legal challenges that can come about to, you know, to be a blocking maneuver to block the people like they did when they took us to court to take it out of place. So I think the citizen movement behind it, there is the court of public opinion, and that's gathering signatures, folks, so let's get that done. Mike. Okay, so you're asking if there's a... Because it's two issues. Log rolling under the same petition. Well, I think it's two separate issues, and it's not putting two things into place. It's not like a piece of legislation where you're changing two separate RCWs. It's actually, you're going to change this one or you're going to change that one. You have a choice. So here's the fork in the road. Reduce taxes, legislature, we got the signatures. And this is an approved measure, so here's the fork in the road. You either approve a tax reduction of 1% on our sales tax or a 2/3 requirement in our Constitution. Yes?
It's really important that we recognize that even though we call the city of Spokane the new socialist America, the truth of it is those voters have always voted with us on this issue. I was at the state party this weekend, and I was just to put it on the ballot. I focused on that for them in terms of,
and if they don't put it on the ballot,
people in the 3rd legislative district and the portions of the 6th, that they continue to be fiscally conservative, and that's an opportunity for us to get their vote.
give it to Jeff to do.
With reference to our city council candidates. So this is an opportunity. We've got to get the signatures. We've got to get it through. And we have to use this as a tool to convince those people in the city that they are conservative.
And Susan Wilmoth, the Republican Party State Committee woman, is correct that every issue we get on the ballot that galvanizes voters, none of us in this room agree 100%. The reason why divorce rates are so high is because everybody decided to get an attorney or a government to step in when someone disagrees. But we don't have to agree 100%, but we can agree on this. Okay, so there's a lot of different political issues out there, and the more that we can get on the ballot that we can agree on, like this and the immigration issue, it brings our voters out. That'll help our candidates get elected. It'll help secure our freedoms, secure our cash, and secure our borders. So it's really important that we stay involved heavily, and the reason why I do it is a lot of it because of the children. My wife and I work with children, and I'm looking at the future that they're facing and the opportunities that are drifting away for my generation. They're not even going to know what they look like if we don't get things turned around and get this sinking ship bailed out.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Thank you, sir. Question. Clicker. Okay, we're good. So we're going to move on now. You heard from George a little earlier about the Spokane City Council banning, the bridge to Hookerville. And let me turn this off since John didn't. And, because the phrase was offensive. So nationally, this lady, Pamela Geller, has really been highly criticized for organizing the Draw Muhammad art contest in Garland, Texas. And Muslims, along with some of our media, I think most of our media, think these type of events should be banned because they're offensive and provocative. So to me, it sounds a lot like the City Council. It truly does. So what I want to do is have you listen to Bill Whittle talk a little bit about free speech.
Hi everybody, welcome to Afterburner. I'm Bill Whittle. 2 weeks ago, I stood on the same spot and told the class of 2015 that if they did not wake up to the fact that this weakness in the face of Islamic murder was going to lead us to ISIS coming here to America, coming and trying to kill us all. 9 days later, ISIS came to an event in Garland, Texas, and tried to kill us all. They tried to kill all of us. Do you understand? All of us. Not just the people brave enough to make a point about the murderous intolerance of these murdering savages. Because despite what the left would dearly love for you to believe, they didn't come here to kill conservatives. They came to kill the people who wanted to speak their mind and hold an opinion that they found offensive. You know, the kind of things that progressives and conservatives alike do every day. And if you're one of the millions of two-legged sheep that have any sympathy for these wolves, let me just make this perfectly clear to you. If you think Pam Geller and the organizers of that event somehow deserve to die for expressing their opinion, well, that's no different than saying that Andre Serrano deserves to die for his incredibly provocative and offensive work called Piss Christ, a photograph of a crucifix in a jar of urine. He deserves to die for that work by that same standard. If you think the event organizers in Garland were asking for it by being provocative and offensive, then you believe that Michael Moore deserves to be shot dead for deliberately provoking and offending conservatives. You believe that Jon Stewart and the entire staff of The Daily Show need to be chalk outlines on a bloody stage floor for being provocative and offensive, and by agreeing that the Muslim savages who thought that drawing a cartoon in Texas was deserving of the death penalty by being provocative and offensive, then you agree with these same people and that same logic when they rape blonde women in Norway for wearing what was to them the provocative and offensive act of appearing in public in a miniskirt. You know, she was just asking for it. If she didn't want to get raped, she should have worn a burqa. That's your position. You know, there's a word for this, and it's not tolerance, and it's not enlightenment, or fairness, or wisdom, any of those fig leaves. There is one thing that drives this phenomenon, this somehow explaining or even mitigating the actions of murderers who want to respond to cartoons with bullets. And that word is simple, unadorned, unrefined cowardice. Cowardice. The kind of museum-grade cowardice shown recently by Gary Trudeau, who said that the massacre of cartoonists at the Charlie Hebdo office in France was, well, regrettable, somehow justified because they were picking on a downtrodden, ostracized class. The mass murder of cartoonists blithely and cleverly explained away by a cartoonist. You know, Gary Trudeau is a multimillionaire who has a house on his own little island in Connecticut. Millions of small, average Americans find what he writes to be provocative and insulting every single day. I wonder if Gary thinks it's okay if someday they give him what he deserves for being provocative and offensive. You know, progressives support Andre Serrano's right to be insulting and provocative, and Michael Moore and Jon Stewart and Gary Trudeau's, they fight for their right to be provocative and insulting, but not for any belief in the actual principles of free speech, because that would take courage. Now, they support their fellow progressives' right to provoke and insult conservatives and Christians because they know nothing is going to happen to them if they do. But insult the prophet, well, that these days has consequences. And that, of course, is the entire point, right? These radical Muslims smelled the fear coming out of these New York skyscrapers and thought that that stench covered the entire country. 2 of them discovered that in parts of Texas, anyway, the air is still fit to breathe. Now, you see this? This is a bell curve. It's one of nature's hidden laws, this funny squiggle, because it determines, among other things, how attributes are distributed across a population. For example, if we're talking about height, there are very few people over 7 feet at the tall end of the curve, very few people under 5 feet at the other end, and right there in the center of this giant bulge is the average American male height of 5 feet 9.5 inches. This bell curve can be applied to height or weight or speed or intelligence, and it can also be applied to cowardice. I've spent the last year studying in great detail the effects of fear on a population. The random arrests, torture, and executions of the Cheka, later the NKVD in the Soviet Union, created such an environment of universal terror that people would do whatever, and I mean anything whatsoever. They'd sell out their wives, their children. They'd praise Stalin as they were being shot in the back of the head in his name. They would do whatever the wielders of that terror wanted them to do. And long before the dreaded murderers of the SS took over the terror machine in Germany, the SA, the brown-shirted stormtroopers of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, well, they weren't murderers. Well, most of them weren't anyway. So, what were they? Well, they're just thugs. They were a private army of thugs that tore down opposition posters, threw beer mugs, and mostly beat up their political opponents, namely communists, supporters of the democratic Weimar Republic, homosexuals, and, of course, the Jews. The Jews had been physically beaten and intimidated for 20 years before the cattle cars to Auschwitz and Treblinka opened their doors. Now, this bell curve can also be a bell curve of fear. Right here on the leading edge are those people who speak their minds for a living and then, out of fear, say things like, well, they crossed the line, or I support free speech, but. There is no line. There is no but. Speech is either free, you can say what you want without being murdered for it, or you can't. You're not 60% dead, and you're not a little bit pregnant. Speech is either free or it isn't. So, we can fight the people who want to murder us for our speech, who, when you get right down to brass tacks, really want to murder us for our thoughts. And we can also fight those who apologize for them out of a vague, unfocused fear and cowardice. And we can fight them now while we're still at the leading edge of the bell curve of cowardice, where cowardice lives mostly in New York skyscrapers and not in the heart of a Texas policeman with a pistol. Or we can do nothing and let the fear grow and be more careful and bow our heads and our minds until the fat part of the snake is among us and everyone is living in fear and everyone watches what they say. And we all wonder if the next line out of our mouths will offend and provoke someone into murdering us in cold blood, while the rest of the cowards applaud and cheer with sweat running down their brows as they did in Soviet Russia and Nazi Germany. Stating in clear and forceful terms to these 7th century savages that here in America, I'm going to do and say whatever I damn well please is not Islamophobia. Islamophobia is a reflective shield. It's rhetoric in a brown shirt. It is, in the widely misattributed words of Andrew Cummins, a word created by fascists and used by cowards to manipulate morons. If you think that the event in Garland, Texas was in any way justified because it was Islamophobic, then which one are you? Are you the fascist, or the coward, or the moron? Maybe you're all three.
I like Bill Whittle. And you can find this video by searching for Bill Whittle on Afterburner. And I really suggest that you watch it every time that you find yourself wavering. thinking that maybe we shouldn't speak out against gay marriage, or, you know, because it might offend someone, or we might cause a fight, or you know, we're just going to keep quiet because we don't want to be sane in speaking. You know, I truly think we should have a Draw Muhammad contest all over the nation. It would be a really quick way of identifying the Islamic radicals among us, and it would certainly do a hell of a lot better job than collecting metadata. You know, who are they? They're going to come out and try and shoot you, and we just need to shoot them back. It works pretty well for me, I think. So that just takes us to the next topic, and this is talking about the creepy spying power behind, you know, that's buried in the Patriot Act.
And who voted for that Patriot Act, by the way?
Yes.
Right now, in America, someone is keeping a record of every call you make, who you call and who calls you, when you talked, and for how long. These records go back for years, and they can obtain this information on you or anyone else, and you'll never know. Someone is watching. That someone is the United States government. But how did this happen in a country where the Constitution protects people's right to be secure against unreasonable searches? And even more importantly, what can you do about it? This is the United States Congress just hours after the 9/11 attacks. Like everyone else in the country, they're in shock and they don't know what will happen next. They only know one thing. They need to do something. Fast. The next month, Congress receives the Patriot Act, a 342-page document. The Attorney General, John Ashcroft, tells Congress they should pass this anti-terrorism bill in a week.
Virtually no one in this chamber had any idea what's in that bill. Why should we care? Well, it's only the Constitution. It's only individual liberty at stake.
The Patriot Act is signed into law just 3 days after it was introduced. Worse, buried deep inside the Patriot Act were provisions that sounded harmless but were anything but, like Section 215. Its supporters claimed it would help the FBI find the bad guys, but over a decade later, the NSA and the FBI are misusing Section 215 to sweep up the information of ordinary U.S. citizens. Section 215 lets the government collect tangible things relevant to an authorized investigation. But the government now claims the records of every phone call you make, now and in the future, are a relevant, tangible thing. So Section 215 isn't just for suspected terrorists. The Bush administration claimed, and Obama agreed, that it could be used to get the call records of everyone in the U.S. Most members of Congress didn't know the law was being misused, and the program is overseen by a secret court where everything's classified. And it was this secret court, not Congress and not us, that decided your phone records are now up for grabs. But there is a way to end Section 215 right now. Congress inserted important safeguards into the Patriot Act, sunset clauses, little timers that require Congress to vote again on the most controversial parts. And if they don't, these sections expire. In June of this year, Section 215 has a sunset clause that's coming to an end. That means Congress has a chance to stop this secret program. We need your help. If we do nothing, Congress could renew this section of the Patriot Act. But if you speak out, we can stop them. Contact Congress now and tell them to end untargeted surveillance under Section 215 of the Patriot Act. And ask your friends to do the same. Let's make this the year that liberty and privacy triumph over secrecy and fear.
So Section 215 expires on June 1st, but because of Memorial Day, Congress is out of session the last week of the month, so the effective deadline is really May 22nd. So, as you've probably all heard, a recent ruling on from the appeals court really brought a lot more attention to 215, and I think that's a good thing. And so the court ruled against the gathering of metadata. It said it's illegal. But it didn't stop the government from continuing to gather it. It just told them what they were doing was illegal. They didn't even say it was unconstitutional. What they really did was instruct Congress to clarify and authorize the program if that's what they think would be best for our national security. So you've got a court telling you that it's illegal. They didn't go as far to say it's unconstitutional, and they're telling Congress, if you really think you need this thing, then authorize it, but spell it out as to what you want. They have 3 options. They can just let 215 sunset, go away, you know, it'll just die. They can pass a clean reauthorization without changes, and McConnell and Burr, the Senate Intelligence Chair, that's what they want to do. Or they could reauthorize it with some changes to acknowledge concerns about privacy and government transparency. There is this thing called the USA Freedom Act, which really ends the government bulk collection of the data, but it says that the telephone companies will store it, and then the government can get a warrant and subpoena the information from the telephone companies. So I'm not really sure that that's a good system either, and you know, I still sort of wonder if it's all that important what they think they're doing. What they're telling us is that the data they're collecting includes the call's length, the phone number from which the call was made, and the number that was called. But you know, when you listen to Edward Snowden, I think they're collecting a lot more than just that. So it's, and that's one of the scary things that you can't really do anything with. Just a second. So either way, I really feel it's intrusive. I don't think the telephone companies can really secure all that information. I mean, not if they need the huge complex they're building in Utah, you know, that kind of thing. And when you really think about the information that they're gathering, they can learn a heck of a lot about somebody. And so let's say that when you're 20 years old, you're in a marriage that didn't work too well, and your wife called 911 and reported battery or something. And now you're 40 and you're running for office, and whoa, look at that information that's out there. So it can reveal civil, political, religious affiliation, social status, intimate relationships. It can tell if you've ever called on domestic violence, rape, suicide hotline, anything that way. It's really not something I feel that we need to be gathering. And Jim, you had some comments on this.
Yes, I believe that this data that's being collected by the smart meter that Inland Power and soon Avista will be hanging on your house will qualify under Section 215. Remember, the smart meter is an extremely effective and revealing surveillance tool that will be spying on everything that you are doing inside the former privacy of your own home, will qualify for gathering by the NSA and a whole plethora of federal agencies. So next time you walk by your meter, remember, it's watching you.
Thanks, Jim. So yeah, it's a pretty scary world out there, Tom.
Yeah, I think our privacy is gone. Anytime you use your credit card, you know, if we're worried about privacy, that ship has sailed. It's just a matter of who owns the data, and who owns the data is whoever's willing to pay for it. You can buy a list of names of all the 80-year-old widows on farm to market roads in Texas, if you're a scammer and you want to use that. And that was sold by Vinod Gupta, a very frequent resident of the Lincoln bedroom under Clinton, and now a member of the board of one of Clinton's charity. But anyhow, I'm not too worried about the government collecting haystacks, so that when they need to find a needle someday, they'll have the haystacks. If you collect everything, every bit of information in the world, it's just about like you're not collecting anything, because it's too much to sift.
Well, and they've proven that because they haven't been able to use any of the data to stop
Right.
anything.
But they got a chance. They got it. Yeah, they're not trying very hard. And every time they get something effective, the New York Times will reveal it. I mean, reveals that, okay, at one point we were trying to track the money behind 9/11 and going through the international banking system. And we had developed that capability for over a long period of time, and the New York Times blew it. I mean, they revealed it. So all the terrorists, that they stopped using that system. So I'm not worried about the government collecting haystacks when they can't do anything, and unless they want a particular needle. There's just too much data there.
And I think the government does very well at coercing people into doing bad things to cause us to think there's an attack in Garland, Texas, or there's this or there's that. I don't think we have a very nice government myself.
Had they been a little more on the ball and a little bolder, they might have been able to stop that a little earlier.
So now we have another video, how the government tracks you, NSA surveillance.
The government is monitoring private phone calls, your children and my children's private phone calls, and tracking who their associates are.
This June, we learned that our private lives are no longer private. The U.S. government is secretly tracking the emails, purchases, text messages, location, and phone calls of people all over the world.
Ed Rooney. This is George Peterson.
With code names like PRISM and X-Keyscore, this network of monitoring programs is just one part of the largest surveillance system in history. This open-ended surveillance system is illegal and operates in total secrecy. Under this system, the government can know where you've been, where you are, and where you're going. The program was only exposed when former NSA contractor Edward Snowden leaked documents detailing the extensive data collection.
I've got information, man. New shit has come to light.
The president, the NSA, and their lawyers have tried to deflect public outrage by distorting the facts and misleading the public about the process. U.S. courts have never allowed the government to run a spying program of this scale. So how did this happen? Well, let's take a step back for a minute. America's founders hated oppressive British surveillance and unreasonable search and seizure.
The issue here is independence.
Understanding that privacy was necessary to almost every basic right in our Constitution, they established the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment exists to prevent the government from tracking or searching your personal information unless they have good reason to believe a crime is happening.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
Using the NSA, the U.S. government is violating the highest law of the country, the Constitution. Government surveillance has gone on for decades, but things got a lot worse in 2001 when the U.S. Congress passed the Patriot Act, giving secret FISA courts more authority to grant surveillance requests on a large scale. Instead of getting a warrant for an individual person suspected of a crime, the government could now search a large list of persons, even those under no suspicion of criminal activity. FISA courts aren't required to disclose what court orders are being approved, and supporting evidence isn't needed.
The 1,789 requests for authorization, one was withdrawn by the government. All the other ones were granted.
It's a rubber stamp.
It's a rubber stamp.
All of this is protected by secrecy, with no system for checks and balances. If the NSA is collecting information on you based on what you read or the websites you go to, you'll likely never know or get to stop it, no matter who you are. Programs like PRISM completely ignore the purpose of warrants while claiming to work within the law. The U.S. government has turned the internet we love into something it was never intended to be, a tool for surveilling everyone. This is the most essential problem. Through these secret courts and secret interpretations of the laws, U.S. government agents can illegally track internet users based on things like keywords.
Analysts who use a system from a web portal at Fort Meade key in selectors or search terms that are designed to produce at least 51% confidence in a target's foreignness.
Data has been collected for years on the most popular websites, Gmail, Facebook, Yahoo, and many more.
Got him at the bottom of the hill.
There's thousands of words that the government tracks. Words like almost any email you send might get your account monitored. This kind of tracking can make you second guess what you say. That's why mass spying is unconstitutional. Abuses are inevitable and data leaks are already happening. Spying on our internet usage gives the government power over our lives. What happens to free speech, free association, or a free press when everyone is under constant surveillance, even in our most private moments? Experts on surveillance, privacy, and intelligence agree on one thing. The NSA, President Bush, and Obama and their secret courts are interpreting multiple laws in a way that most Americans would find shocking. This is allowing the kind of surveillance and collection that the Constitution was not meant to allow. These programs break the law. They violate the Fourth Amendment and they strip us of our privacy. The U.S. Constitution was written to prevent government surveillance programs like PRISM. It's up to us to demand that these ideals be upheld. Help us stop the NSA, restore the Constitution, and keep the world free.
So it may not worry you, but it is unconstitutional, and I truly believe that we need to stand for the Constitution. So we have a government database called MainCore. And it's been collecting data on dissidents for years, but it's, quote, secret. So, you know, is it or isn't it? And yet there's so much information about it, it probably is. So my question is, what is a dissident? And does that change from administration to administration? Wikipedia describes MainCore as, MainCore is the code name of a database maintained since the 1980s by the federal government of the United States. MainCore contains personal and financial data of millions of U.S. citizens believed to be threats to national security. The data, which comes from the NSA, FBI, CIA, and other sources, is collected and stored without warrants or court orders. So, you know, we can get upset about Section 215 of the Patriot Act, but until we have more Edward Snowdens, there's not a whole heck of a lot we can do about the illegal activity of the almighty government. And I've just got to ask, what in the world is happening to America? And it's really that, you know, I hear people, well, I have nothing to fear, so it doesn't, I don't care if they collect my phone calls, I don't say any, you know, that kind of, we should care, it's unconstitutional.
But if you're looking at 8 million people, you can't look at 8 million people. Oh, yes. I'd be surprised if they can do it.
So anyway. Yeah. Right. So let's not, it's done by machines, it's not done by people. So this is where we are, Tom. This is where we are. Any society that would give up a little liberty to gain a little security will deserve neither and lose both. And that is exactly where we are. We're being told that we need to give up our freedom, the right to privacy for safety. And you'll see what I mean by listening to this next video. So listen to Marco here. You're going to be hearing a lot more of this kind of stuff.
One day, I hope that I'm wrong, but one day there will be an attack that's successful. And the first question out of everyone's mouth is going to be, why didn't we know about it? And the answer better not be because this Congress failed to authorize a program that might have helped us know about it. These people are not playing games. They don't go on these websites and say the things they say for purposes of aggrandizement. This is a serious threat, and I hope we reauthorize this bill.
Madam President, I thank my colleagues for their participation. I thank my colleagues on the other side of the aisle for their accommodation And I would conclude by saying this. In the very near future, this Congress will be presented two choices: to reauthorize a program that works, or to roll back our tools to pre-9/11.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's what American people want. I don't believe that's what members of Congress want. I urge my colleagues, become educated on what this program is, what it does, and more importantly, how effective it's been implemented. I yield the floor.
He talks just like Peter.
So we're going to be hearing a lot more of this. And, you know, what do you think we're going to end up with? Rob?
Oh, just to answer Tom's question, there's a fantastic new book out. Jim and I are reading it. In fact, we probably both read it, called Technocracy Rising. And it gets into a lot of different things, but one of them is transhumanism. And computers' ability to go through all the haystacks is increasing exponentially. And maybe in 2042 they're predicting that's a singularity when machines will be smarter than human beings are, at least, as far as the capacity of knowledge and making decisions and all that. So that's very worrisome. It's written by Patrick Wood, if you remember Patrick Wood from Post Falls. So it just brings everything together in that book.
But has anybody actually been unjustly prosecuted?
You aren't going to be told that.
Secret trial, secret court. No, it's not a secret.
Yeah, so anyway, I have another over here. I have another person that'd like to comment. There's a microphone, please.
All right. It's if you just take TV cameras, as an average, it's been 30 frames a second. We've got up to 60. We got little cameras now. They fit in the side of an ink pen. You can't even see them. They could record for 4.5 hours in 1080p. Okay, they are making cameras that can do over 400 frames per second. Now, every store you go into now has a TV camera. Let's advance that a little further into the future where we have a microchip or your cell phone. When you walk under it and it can lay out 400 frames a second of your face and then put it in a database, and then in the middle of the night, just like your credit card, it goes to a master computer. Every door that you have walked under, everything you have done has been, has been made of a record, sent to a master computer. They can compile everything, and when our microchip comes into our body, you can guarantee that all these cameras are going to surveil us.
Okay, so we're acting out of fear is all I can say. We're going to give up anything for our safety, and I really think it's a very sad.
I'm sorry. Well, the problem is we're not acting at all. Major Nidal Hassan, everybody knew, everybody that had been in contact with him, everybody that had supervised him, had damn good reason to know that this guy did not belong in the U.S. Army. Okay, so we get all this data. And this was data collected the old-fashioned way, by hand, by ear, by what he wrote down. What did they do with it? Nothing. They didn't do a damn thing with it. They didn't have the guts to act on the information. So my point to you is, we're collecting all this stuff. I think we're just collecting the haystacks. But there's no indication that we got the guts to act on it.
Well, Tom, you think that we didn't have the guts to act on it, and a lot of us think they knew it and they didn't want to act on it because they want to have those incidents in the United States. Two different things. So anyway, we're going to move on to the Trade Promotion Authority now. We covered in detail a lot last month, so just a quick update. As probably a lot of you heard today, there's been a little fight going on in the Senate, in the House, as far as whether it can be taken out of committee and put on the floor for a vote or not. And Harry Reid, the Democrats voted against bringing a TPA to the floor for consideration. You can bet that Obama is going to be issuing a lot of invites to his fellow Democrats to come visit him at the White House and that kind of thing. There's going to be a lot of politicking going on. But what a lot of people don't understand about TPA is that TPA has been in effect for a long time. And it does have a sunset clause in it, and so we have been out of having a trade promotion authority for a while. Now, the reason that Reagan and other administrations felt that TPA was necessary, you've got to remember that this is a trade agreement of the United States with other nations. Now, the other nations aren't going to sit down and put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into these trade agreements if they think that they can negotiate, 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 and then it comes back over and then the Congress can, you know, rip it apart. So it's been the process that there's been good government representation on these panels that do these agreements, but these agreements are done with looking out for the interests, quote, of the United States and doing what they want. And all TPA does is the Congress cannot start amending it, ratifying it, changing it, doing anything. They can vote it up or they can vote it down. That's technically what TPA is. So no amendments, a shorter period of time, a vote up or a vote down. Now, I think the reason that many of us are opposed to TPA is, first of all, we don't believe that Obama can negotiate anything properly. And so Lord knows what in the world you'd get. And they haven't handled some of these trade agreements, especially the TPP, in a way that has been at least a little bit open for folks to see. They haven't included members of Congress and things that way in the negotiations, and so it's caused a lot of concern. But honestly, if you ever do want agreements with other nations to go forward, you've got to have something like this, because why would anyone negotiate with you if they figure we did all this work and then you change it all? So there's two sides of the story on that, and you're going to be hearing a lot more of things like this.
Hi, I'm Congressman Tom McClintock from California. Right now, Congress is considering important legislation to help create more jobs and prosperity for the American people. It's called Trade Promotion Authority, and I'd like to visit with you about it. Trade means prosperity. More markets for American products means more jobs and higher wages for American workers.
Yeah.
More products entering our economy means more consumer choices and lower prices. But here's the problem. Unfair trade regulations, labor standards, high taxes, and foreign subsidies often put American workers at a real disadvantage. To remove these barriers, we have to negotiate trade agreements to put Americans back in the game under fair and equal rules. We haven't done that recently because the legal authority to effectively negotiate these agreements expired years ago, and we're seeing the result. Since 2000, there have been 48 trade agreements among Asian nations, and Americans were part of only 2 of them. China is writing the rules while we're left behind. That's why Trade Promotion Authority is so important. It's the key to restarting America's trade engine. Here's how it works. Congress sets 150 objectives that our negotiators have to advance. Fair rules that both sides have to follow, everything from food safety and labor standards to rules for trading on the internet. If these objectives aren't met, the deal's off. End of discussion. If they are met, then the agreement's published in full for 60 days so the American people can weigh in, and only then will Congress vote to approve it or reject it. This process gives our negotiating partners the confidence that the concessions that they make won't be endlessly altered once the agreement gets to Congress. It will either be voted up or voted down. That assures our negotiators will bring back to Congress the very best offer from our trading partners without their holding anything back. We've negotiated trade agreements this way generally since the 1930s, and very much like this since the 1970s. But now, in some quarters, it's become controversial. Some on the left oppose it because of pressure from protectionist special interests. Well, they've forgotten the painful lessons of history. Protectionism is the fastest way to destroy an economy, as this nation has learned repeatedly going back as far as Jefferson's time. Some on the right oppose it because they don't trust the president and his history of executive overreach. Well, I don't trust him either. That's why I support this bill. Without it, he can negotiate anything he wants. Trade Promotion Authority binds him to the will of Congress before the agreement is reached. If and only if he meets Congress's objectives, will Congress then agree not necessarily to pass the agreement, but only to vote on it after the American people have had their say. I'm particularly concerned about illegal immigration. This bill forbids the president from making any changes to our laws, including our immigration laws. I don't know about you, but I am tired of years of economic stagnation, of watching our country marginalized, and of an administration that often operates in direct defiance of Congress and the American people. This bill is a giant step to solving these problems. The free exchange of goods, whether between people or nations, means that both sides go away with something of greater value to themselves, or the trade wouldn't take place. Freedom creates prosperity, and the greater the freedom, the greater the prosperity. Trade Promotion Authority is the means by which this freedom is advanced for ourselves and for our children. Freedom works. It's time that we put it back to work.
I noticed he didn't speak anything about having the same EPA standards or the same human rights.
Congress gives them 150 levels that they must negotiate to, and those are included in that, yes. So stay tuned on Trade Promotion Authority. They've had one hiccup today. There should be more activity, so it's just something to watch. So as you learned last month, TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, is a giant trade agreement being negotiated with 11 countries plus the United States. And we're told this is very critical, as these 11 countries are responsible for 40% of the world's GDP and 26% of the world's trade. So it really sounds pretty darn important, doesn't it? But what's important, you know, what's really crazy about this is we already have trade agreements with most of these countries. There are only 4 that we don't have trade agreements with. So we have trade agreements with 7. There's only 4 that we don't. And that's Malaysia, New Zealand, and Vietnam, and the big one, the one that they want to have an agreement with and haven't been able to strike one, Japan. So when you look at it that way, it's not nearly as big a deal as we're being told. We already have trade agreements that represent 80% of that 40% that they're talking about. So all of this is a whole bunch of stuff over something that's not nearly as big as they're making it out to be. And it's also turned into a real big political landmine. The swing state Democrats are using it against their GOP opponents, saying it would ship U.S. manufacturing jobs overseas, increase unemployment, and all of that kind of stuff. So you're going to find those Republicans voting against it because they don't want the Democrats throwing those rocks at them, and yet it's really the Republicans' thing that they really would like this TPP passed. So it's, you know, there's a lot of attention to it. The ones not in danger of losing their seat, they'll most likely go along with the party lines. The ones that are in those swing states in tight races, they'll probably shield themselves against the rocks that can be thrown at them. So it's really hard to say because you can't, you see, the thing that I don't like about it is you don't know a lot about it. It's a trade agreement, but there's 19 chapters. 5 chapters pertain to trade, and the other 14 chapters pertain to, you know, what? And yet you have to remember that this is a trade agreement being negotiated by the United States with these other countries. So these other countries aren't imposing anything on the United States. We're trying to get them to not charge tariffs on our products. But that's right, you know, what products do we have? What manufacturing do we have? All of those kinds of things. So it's, you know, it's I think it's a whole lot of hooey about something very small. You know, when you're looking at 3 little countries in Japan, not...
I have to say to this woman's comment, I met 3 young gals that were 15 from China that were here visiting, and they said, I asked them how they like it in the country. They said it's great, but I can't find anything to take home for souvenirs.
Yeah. So this is a video here of Obama talking about the TPP, and I think you'll enjoy this.
We strive to make sure our own economy lives up to high standards. But in a lot of parts of the world, the rules are unfair. The playing field is uneven. That puts American businesses and American workers at a disadvantage. So the question is, what should we do about it? Some folks think we should just withdraw and not even try to engage in trade with these countries. I disagree. We have to make sure America writes the rules of the global economy. And we should do it today while our economy is in the position of global strength. So the Trans-Pacific Partnership that we're working on, it's the biggest trade deal that we're working on right now, has to do with the Asia-Pacific region. And it reflects our values in ways that, frankly, some previous trade agreements did not. It's the highest standard, most progressive trade deal in history. That there have been a bunch of critics about trade deals generally and the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And what's interesting is typically they're my friends coming from my party. And they're my fellow travelers on minimum wage and on job training and on clean energy and on every progressive issue. They're right there with me. And then on this one, they're like whooping on me. I actually think some of my dearest friends are wrong. They're just wrong. And here's why. First of all, they say that this trade agreement will cost American jobs, and they're really basing this on some past experience looking at what happened in the 90s, over the last 20 years, as there was a lot of outsourcing going on. And you know what? Past trade agreements, it's true, didn't always reflect our values or didn't always do enough to protect American workers. But that's why we're designing a different kind of trade deal. And the truth is that companies that...
Thank you.
So anyway, what I think is funny about that one is he's speaking at Nike. Nike does not manufacture one shoe in the United States. So you're just going, okay. So they keep telling us that the trade agreements are good for America. Since NAFTA, the U.S. has trade deficits that have totaled $11.2 trillion. We know that millions of manufacturing jobs have been lost and tens and thousands of factories have been closed. But think not only of that, but what about what could have been if we didn't have those trade agreements? How many factories would have been opened? How many jobs created? So our trade and our foreign policies have led to the decline in the United States and the rise of China. And I just really wonder, when are we going to wake up and believe in America? Protect America, stand up for America, and stop trying to fix the rest of the world. So now we are going to move on to the Middle East. Jeff.
If the word progressive in that in his saying is the best, most progressive deal, doesn't scare the crap out of you.
So I liked that cartoon. I thought it was pretty cool. Not too much has changed as far as our nuclear deal with Iran. It still dominates the news. It's still not stable. And the idea of a deal is still distancing many of the Middle Eastern countries from the United States. They just don't want those capabilities in Iran. If Iran gets that, then they will too, kind of thing. So you'll have an armed Middle East. The Senate passed the Nuclear Agreement Review Act, and you know, all of this talk is upsetting most of the Middle Eastern countries, but Russia says that it'll make all possible efforts to ensure a deal on Iran's nuclear program is reached. Thought that would be consoling to you. So what does the Review Act do? Doesn't do much of anything. Well, the Congress is reviewing it. It prevents us from reinstating the sanctions. So for 30 days, while the review's taking place, the sanctions can't be lifted. They can vote to disapprove it or take no action. However, Obama could veto the disapproval, and there's not enough votes to overturn a veto. So the deal would not come to the Senate as a treaty, which would require a 2/3 majority. So we've got a Review Act here that absolutely will do nothing. But hey, our people did something. They got a Review Act. So that's where we are in that situation. It's not very comforting. So now we're going to go on to refugees. Like I said, there are so many darn issues that you're just going, what should we pick, you know? So Ann Corcoran is a author of a newer book. She wanted answers as to why refugees were being resettled in her hometown and found that no one was really paying any attention to the matter. So now it's been years later, she has basically become the expert on this. So let's listen to her explain what's going on here. It's in, she'll tell you, I think it's Maryland, something like that.
It's been over 7 years since a church group from another state brought a couple hundred refugees to the rural county where I live. I wanted to know, how could they do this? What was the governmental process that allowed the resettlement of refugees to a county ill-prepared to assimilate them? Employment opportunities were scarce. The health department was not familiar with illnesses and mental health problems of people who came from parts of the third world. The school system was not prepared to teach large numbers of students who didn't speak English, and subsidized housing was scarce. I wanted to know who gave permission for what amounted to a dropping off of needy people in our county seat. So I began my research and posted everything I learned to a blog, Refugee Resettlement Watch, so that others might know what I learned about a federal program that is 35 years old this year. In summary, I discovered that the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees was choosing most of our refugees. It's under the influence of a powerful Muslim supremacist group called the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Not surprisingly, a large number of U.S.-bound refugees are coming from countries with large numbers of people who hate us, including Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq, and soon from Syria, just to name a few. The U.S. State Department then distributes the refugees to 9 major federal contractors, 6 of which are so-called religious charities, but all are largely funded from the U.S. Treasury. They're not passing the plate on Sundays for the $1 billion price tag for the resettlement. And that figure does not include the extensive welfare benefits refugees receive. The refugees are then sent to over 190 cities and towns in the U.S. where the 9 major contractors support 350 subcontractors. The refugees receive help from the subcontractor for up to 6 months, and the subcontractor then submits paperwork to admit the relatives of the first group. As the years have passed, I've become increasingly alarmed by the percentage of problematic Muslim refugees admitted and distributed around the U.S. through this program. By the way, the Refugee Resettlement Program is not the only one used for legally admitting Muslims, but it is one of the most important. Many are forming cities within cities. Perhaps you know one where you live, where mosques are being built to consolidate, train, and promote a growing American Muslim population and its Islamic supremacist doctrine called Sharia. This process of Muslim colonization is called the Hijra. Muhammad told his followers to migrate and spread Islam in order to dominate all the lands of the world. He said they were obliged to do so, and that's exactly what they are doing now with the help and support of the UN, the U.S. State Department, and the Christian and Jewish groups assigned to seed them throughout the country. Your tax dollars pay for it all. I've written this little book, Refugee Resettlement and the Hijra to America, so that you will know what is happening to us and what we can do about it. We only need to look to a troubled Europe to see the path ahead for America if we can't stop this migration and stop it soon. There's no reason on earth that we should have brought over 100,000 Somalis and another 100,000 Iraqi Muslims to America. Soon we will be resettling Syrian Muslims in large numbers. The UN at the moment has over 10,000 in a pipeline destined for our towns. The FBI told Congress recently that they cannot be properly screened. If you don't help counter the Hijra, we are, in my opinion, doomed. Over time, this migration will be more devastating to your children and grandchildren and to our country than any terrorist attack could ever be. Learn more at Refugee Resettlement Watch and SecureFreedom.org.
So they're being refugees, they're being resettled all over the country with little to no local control over the programs or federal oversight, assisted by leftist religious groups that are taxpayer funded. Now, Trey Gowdy started asking questions only when Spartanburg, a city in his district, was selected as a city to resettle refugees. Didn't care about it before then, but now it's, you know, hitting a little close to home. So in a letter to the State Department, he wanted to know things like, how were the locations selected? How many refugees per location? How are the refugees selected? What government services will be provided? How does the administration plan to pay for the services? Was local government consulted, and if so, which ones? Who's responsible for them? And explain the background check process. And so even though these programs have been going on for over 35 years, it really wasn't given much attention until, like what she said in her video, a member of the FBI counterterrorism force testified and said that the United States has no strategy to effectively screen refugees and ensure there are not links to terror organizations. So then they thought maybe they should pay some attention. So again, it's another broken system. It's spending a lot of money and exposing U.S. citizens to potentially violent and dangerous individuals. And, you know, we may, like I said, she was from back east somewhere. I've seen a map where the administration is really trying to flood the Bible Belt with the Muslims to sort of break them up a little bit. But look what's happening right next door.
My next guest, Shahram Hadian, is a Christian. He's a Christian pastor and former Muslim. He says that radical Islam is rearing its head in Idaho. He joins me now to talk about what he has been seeing. Pastor Hadian, first off, thank you so much for joining me. Idaho, of all places, Idaho. I mean, we keep hearing about instances like this. You know, Garland, Texas, and Oklahoma. We keep hearing about this, and it just this is flyover America. This is, you know, this is part of the Midwest. Tell me about what you have discovered.
Well, Dana, you're absolutely right that you tend to see these conservative areas that are being targeted, for example, in Irving, Texas, with the Sharia tribunal. So Idaho, you would think, man, it's a conservative state, it's a Republican-controlled state, but we've exposed the fact that there are plans in Idaho, first of all, that we know that there are 2,000 Muslim refugees that are being dumped into the area of Boise and Twin Falls. Just World News Daily had reported, or World Net Daily had reported that 300 of those are going to be Syrian refugees for the first time, bringing Syrian refugees into Boise area and Twin Falls. This is to the behest of local lawmakers, mayors, law enforcement. They have no clue where these people are coming from.
Right.
And the FBI testified, Steinbeck testified before Congress that particularly when it comes to Syrian refugees, they have no way of telling the background of these folks because the system is broken in Syria, so they can't verify, are these jihadis, are they coming in? So that's just one example. We also know the Muslim Student Association is very active in Boise State. They're getting carte blanche to do whatever they want, including having hijab days on campus where they're allowing women to experience what it's like to wear a hijab, but they would never allow a Christian prayer on that campus or bring a speaker like me in because, you know, I'm too controversial. Wow. And also we know that outside of Boise, there was a plot exposed to develop a Muslim enclave, a specific enclave in Kuna, Idaho, where a Bosnian Muslim group is buying property to build 6,000 cemetery plots for Muslims alone. Now, the population of Muslims around the Boise area is about 10,000. So you would think, well, why would they need a cemetery plot for 6,000 Muslims? Once a Freedom of Information Act was done on their plans, they're planning to build a close to $1 million mosque, an Islamic school, housing for Muslims, and the cemetery plot. And so this is clearly an enclave that is being planned. And the Council on American Islamic Relations is taking an interest now in Idaho. There was a bill that we were able to expose in the Idaho legislature that is opening the door to foreign law and international law and the Hague Convention. And CARE is tracking this bill. So lots of stuff going on in Idaho. And so we have to not let our guard down that just because we think an area is conservative, that somehow that means that we're immune.
Well, no, and I think that's a great point that you make, because there have been, for instance, in the city of, or in the state of Texas, with like the city of Irving and the city and Garland, and in Irving, there's this establishment or attempt to establish this Sharia tribunal for family court, and just the reaction against concerned citizens who spoke up, and the mayor who spoke up against this, and I'm thinking Irving, Texas. I mean, these are, you're so right in this. I think a lot of people get very comfortable and they get very apathetic, and they think, well, this is an area where we value limited government, and we believe in American law, so this is fine. We don't have to worry about anything like this. But as you're telling me right now, yeah, actually you kind of do.
So more happy news. Heck of a night, huh? And so we're going to switch now. We're going to go to vaccinations. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the vaccinations, but as you know, they've come into the forefront again because of the measles cases the past year. And as you probably have read, just this past week, 2 babies in southern Mexico died and 29 others hospitalized from adverse reactions from shots given on Friday from the country's national vaccination program. And we're hearing that mandatory vaccinations are necessary to protect infants that are too young to be immunized. And so I came across this letter from a lady with a very long name, but her first name is Tatiana, and she has a PhD in immunology. And I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but what she's saying is that that is untrue, that unvaccinated children don't pose a higher threat to the public than the vaccinated. And I'll leave this around so you guys can grab it if you want to. But the summary is, in summary, 1, due to the properties of the modern vaccines, non-vaccinated individuals pose no greater risk of transmission of polio, diphtheria, pertussis, and numerous non-type BH influenza strains than vaccinated individuals do. Non-vaccinated individuals pose virtually no danger of transmission of hepatitis B in a school setting, and tetanus is non-transmissible. Number 2, there's a significantly elevated risk of emergency room visits after childhood vaccination appointments, attesting that vaccination is not risk-free. Outbreaks of measles cannot be entirely prevented, even if we had nearly perfect vaccination compliance. And 4, an effective method of preventing measles and other viral diseases in vaccine-ineligible infants and the immunocompromised somebody or other is available for those who may be exposed to these diseases. Taken together, these 4 facts make it clear that discrimination in a public school setting against children who are not vaccinated for reasons of conscience is completely unwarranted, as the vaccine status of conscientious objectors poses no undue public health risk. And that was an open letter to the legislators that were currently considering vaccine legislation. So it's pretty darn interesting, and when you read some of the things there, you're just going, wow. So thought you'd enjoy that part. And I'm not going to show this video, but I am going to let you know that we've approved 2 more GMO items. And we now have GMO apples and GMO potatoes. The two apples are, they're called Arctic apples, and they come from the Golden Delicious and the Granny Smiths. Those are the only two that are there. And those were developed by a little fruit farm in the Okanagan. And then the potatoes, they're called innate. They eliminate browning and bruising. That's J.R. Simplot one. And so what's interesting on this one is that they're being marketed as GMO in that they don't brown, they don't bruise, that kind of thing. And so they're thinking that it's going to be appealing to the public. So that is tonight's program. Like I said, there were way too many things. Movie night is going to be one generation away, and depending on the time, which is something or other, it's too late. I won't show the trailer. So, but it's a great movie, so be here. And that's it. So we are done.